Okay, Ahmed, let me ask you this. Ahmed, no, stop talking for a moment, Ahmed. Let me just ask you. Ahmed, would you like to directly tell Hamas right now to release all the Israeli hostages?
No, I wouldn't.
Of course. Of course. So there's a massive double standard. At the heart of your debate, there's a massive double standard. You don't care how Jewish people get treated. You only care how Palestinians get treated. If you want to go after Israeli leaders,
or Israeli soldiers that are committing war crimes and war crimes against
I have called for Netanyahu.
Can I ask you a question?
Ahmed, no, you can't. I'm asking the questions. I'm asking the questions. Ahmed,
it is about framing.
I'm asking the questions. It's my show. That's how it works. But I always ask most of the guests I've had on, do they condemn Hamas? It's become a sort of running thing, which people have mocked me for. But the reason I ask it is I think if you don't condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th, I find it very hard to stomach anything you then want to say about anything else, because it should be condemned by everybody.
Buckle up, y'all. This clash kicks off over Irish rap crew Kneecap getting their US visas yanked for calling Israel's Gaza blitz a genocide. Yet Piers Morgan still hammers his trusty October 7th reset button like it wipes out every war crime since. Ahmed is gonna fire up, but Piers only wants a Hamas condemnation soundbite while ignoring the UN 250-page report of kids blasted by Israeli snipers. Enter rapper Nissim Black, who drops a tired "Arabs kill more Arabs" line, as if the magic trick makes white phosphorus and US weapon shipments disappear. Notice the math here? Spit a bar that says "Up Hamas" and you're blacklisted. Drop 2,000-pound bombs on apartment blocks and you get a standing ovation in Congress. Pecking order free speech at its finest. Grab your popcorn. Ahmed's about to torch every double standards in the room and light up Piers Morgan's hypocrisy. Let's go.
Ahmed Eldin, you're a Palestinian commentator. I've had a lot of Palestinian guests on this show since October the 7th. We've had some very lively, passionate debates, and I will always platform people to say what they want to say. But I always ask most of the guests I've had on, do they condemn Hamas? It's become a sort of running thing, which people have mocked me for. But the reason I ask it is I think if you don't condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th, I find it very hard to stomach anything you then want to say about anything else, because it should be condemned by everybody. Here, you have a group from Ireland who are publicly endorsing Hamas post-October the 7th. Why shouldn't people be outraged by that?
Appreciate the way you framed the question, but I want to take a moment to, in Britain today, a rap group's lyrics about genocide are causing more outrage than the genocide itself. I mean, Sharon talks about Kneecap inciting violence with a fist, but we're completely, so far, 10 minutes into the segment, ignoring the actual extreme violence Israel is using in Gaza every single day, burning entire families in tents. That is violent and aggressive, killing children on a daily basis.
Your lot did that to Jews. You're talking about what the Palestinians did to the Jews, are you?
Piers, Kneecap is under investigation, not because they incited violence, but because they dared to do what I just did, call out Israel's mass killing of children, its military occupation. And in other words, they're giving voice to a generation.
Well, hang on, okay, but hang on.
Gaslit.
Hang on a second. Hang on, Sharon. Let me ask Ahmed one question. Would you then endorse the sentence "Up Hamas, up Hezbollah"? Do you believe that is okay?
I don't know. I wonder, when you ask me this, if I were to flip it to you or Sharon, would you support Hail Israel or support Israel when Israel's murdering children very violently on a daily basis? And it's being done?
I haven't said that anyway.
Hezbollah is killing
I'm asking you the same question you asked
not Israelis.
No, Ahmed, here's my point.
Do I think that if your question is, do I think that the people in Gaza have a right to resist genocide, ethnic cleansing, and occupation? Yes, but Piers.
No, well, hang on. Well, that's interesting. Well, that's interesting, Ahmed. Let me ask you just to clarify that. Does that mean you think that October the 7th was an act of resistance and therefore justified?
Well, I don't know. What was October 8th?
Well, let me ask you about October the 7th. Don't play whataboutery. Just answer directly.
But Piers, I'm not. Why are we talking about October the 7th? I thought I was here to talk about Kneecap. Can I just? I'm not.
Because you're the one who decided to move it, with respect to you, into a wider context about whether people would condemn what Israel has done. So I'm just saying to you, Ahmed, I'm just saying to you, would you condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th or not?
Of course, I would condemn the killing of innocent civilians, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
Right.
I mean, Piers, what Britain's
you literally just talked about it.
But Piers, what is Britain's message to its youth? Let's talk about that. If you speak out against a genocidal regime, if you condemn it, they're going to threaten you, censor you, and jail you. But if you participate in genocide, what? You can still perform.
I have no problem with people criticizing Israel's government for the way they've executed this war. I've done it myself many times. That is free speech. That's what free speech is about. Where I have a problem, no, Ahmed, where I have a problem, and you're trying to dive around this, the reason that Kneecap are in trouble has got nothing to do with them just criticizing Israel, and got everything to do with the clips that came out after their Coachella performance, when people discovered that only in November, 4 months ago, they chanted "Up Hamas, Up Hezbollah," supporting
whether I support that or not, Piers, what I'm saying is irrelevant to the discussion. I think we can agree on this.
It's not irrelevant. It's obviously completely irrelevant to the discussion.
No, it's not. Let me tell you why it's not. Let me just give me a chance.
It's the whole point of a discussion.
If you just wouldn't interrupt me the way you let Sharon talk for a little bit. I mean, the UK media and political class have spent 72 hours scrambling not to condemn Israel's starvation siege, not to prevent weapons from reaching a government that is committing genocide, that is bombing children, killing them daily, ripping them to shreds, and it's all being documented. But they're trying to ban a band from festivals, from Spotify. And what have they chosen to ignore? I mean, Israel has now blocked every single truck of food, water, fuel, and medicine from entering Gaza for 60 days. The US, like many world powers, are enabling the violation of international law, aggression, violence, daily violence that is unprecedented, according to not just NGOs. I mean, they're ignoring you.
All right, but just to be clear, hang on, you can't just keep talking, Ahmed, with respect. I hear you. You made your point forcefully. But just to be clear then, you do not have a problem with what Kneecap said in relation to Up Hamas, Up Hezbollah. Is that your position?
My position is I don't have a problem with them supporting anyone they want to support, because that's under free speech protected.
With no accountability?
What about Israel's accountability? You want us to
stop playing whataboutery. I'm asking you specifically.
Piers, I am here as a guest, as a journalist, as someone who is a former professor at Columbia. There are people being jailed and disappeared off the streets for speech. They are being held accountable in a way that Israel has managed to evade.
Well, actually, they're being held accountable. They're actually being held accountable for harassing Jewish students, barricading them into rooms, making sure they couldn't attend, making sure they couldn't go to lectures. They were harassing the Jewish students.
Do you think that it's right to hold those people accountable and yet not hold Israeli leaders who have an ICC?
No, if you want to go after Israeli leaders. If you want to go after Israeli leaders...
Or Israeli soldiers that are committing war crimes and war crimes against humanity.
I have called for Netanyahu...
Can I ask you a question?
Ahmed, no, you can't. I'm asking the questions. Ahmed,
it is about framing.
I'm asking the questions. It's my show. That's how it works. I've called for Netanyahu to go. I think there are some right-wing headbangers in his cabinet who should go too. I think the war has gone on way too long. I think the amount of civilian death is unacceptable. I think of all these things. I say them publicly on a regular basis, okay? But I'm afraid that the debate here is about whether this band should be allowed to continue performing in America, where they are publicly supporting terror groups. And at the moment, you don't want to answer that. All you want to do is keep saying, but what about the Israelis?
Give me a chance. The violent rhetoric can be problematic, but it is far less problematic than the violence we are witnessing every day. And so if we're here to talk about whether Kneecap should be held accountable, I'm simply positing, is it more of a priority for any society, any civilized society?
All right, well, it's a point of view.
Hold people accountable.
Let me bring in. All right, let me bring in the other guest.
Violent, or for the daily murder of children.
If you made the point and you made it forcefully, and I respect that, that's fine. Let me bring in Nissim Black. You're an Orthodox Jew. You're a rapper. What do you feel about this?
I feel, first off, Piers, I should say, I don't know how qualified, since I've only been a resident white colonizer for the last 9 years or so. But I think this 100% clout chasing is no different than all the other artists, the Macklemores and all these other people who are trying to look. We're playing a game as if, I don't know what everybody else has been watching, but we're playing a game as if the media and the news has all been on Israel's side and everything's backing Israel. That's just not what I see personally. So what's actually going on is that it's more popular to support Hamas. It's more popular to support all these terrorist groups. You're not really sacrificing anything. You're just only going into what the rest of the crowd is. So all of this is garbage. These guys definitely, and here's a very important point. When people say something bad about another people or group, usually you could get a laugh or two after that. When Jews start getting talked about, it leads to actionable items, violence, not allowing students to go into their class. It leads to a rise, a crazy rise in statistically in anti-Semitism inside of America. So once you say something about this particular group, it's very interesting how something actually starts to happen, as opposed to when other people make all different type of things, the stereotypical things about other groups. And when it's said about Jews, then all of a sudden there's some actual violence that happens. So this is 100% clout chasing. There are some 50-odd conflicts that's going on in the world, even more than that, I think, that the Americans are reporting. Why is this one on every single airway? Everybody's talking about this particular one.
Because it's a genocide.
0.2. No, listen, way more. This is a genocide compared to what happened in Syria? Is this a genocide compared to what's happened in Yemen?
Syria was not a genocide. There's a specific definition of genocide.
Because I'm Black and I'm Jewish, I could say this. Hold on, Ahmed. I could say this. We watched this 5 years ago with the Black Lives Matter movement. Look at how the world was in chaos, right? Over white on black violence, which these were very, very small amount of cases, but black on black violence, nobody cared. So 500,000 Arabs can die at the hands of other Arabs. And by the way, the number one leading murder of Arabs are Arabs. Just to put that out there.
I'm sorry, as an Arab who is Palestinian, I need to just say, I know. I need to just say, you're comparing.
And then all of a sudden, this is what it is.
The broad stroke that you're using, with all due respect, to talk about Arabs as if Syrians and what's happening in Palestine, what happened in Syria was a civil war. What's happening in Palestine is colonization, is land grabs, is annexation, is ethnic cleansing, and it's been happening for decades. That has not been happening in Syria for decades. What happened and what we're discussing did not start on October 7th. Piers,
absolutely, I agree.
Media, Piers, the British media is currently dissecting these videos, the ones that, completely ignoring Israeli snipers blowing out children. I mean, there was a 250-page UN report documenting how Israel's elite sharpshooters deliberately targeted children, medics, journalists, and continue to do so.
Presumably, though, presumably, all right, okay, Ahmed, let me ask you this. Ahmed, stop talking for a moment, Ahmed. Let me just ask you, Ahmed, would you like to directly tell Hamas right now to release all the Israeli hostages?
No, I wouldn't.
Of course. So there's a massive double standard at the heart of your debate. There's a massive double standard. You don't care how Jewish people get treated. You only care how Palestinians get treated. If babies and Holocaust survivors get kidnapped and taken into hellhole tunnels, you don't care. You don't care, do you?
Piers, did you bring me on to give Hamas political advice? Or did you give me, because what I would say to you, if you think that it's wrong for me not to suggest to Hamas that they should release the hostages, are you aware there are thousands and thousands of hostages, including children,
I'm aware of,
being held in Israeli prisons, being raped,
what I'm aware of is that you have an absolute inability. Ahmed, with respect to you, you have an absolute... Ahmed, with respect, you have a chronic inability to answer any straightforward question without immediately playing whataboutery. But what you've... Hang on.
Here's what Israel is doing to the people in Gaza cannot be compared to what Kneecap said on stage.
Stop talking. What you revealed in your last answer when you said you would not tell Hamas to release the hostages was very telling. And everyone watching will find that very telling.
I think they should
In other
release
words,
the hostages
you don't care
when Israel
actually
releases the
about anything
thousands of
Hamas has done
hostages.
to those Israelis and
No,
Jews.
I think what Hamas
It's fine.
has done
It's
is
fine.
very...
You can have that position,
Piers, you want
but
to
you've
put words
revealed
in my
that
mouth.
position.
You want to bring me here to do that? Well done.
You know
I'll
what? I
applaud
brought you here to debate Kneecap. All you've done is say I shouldn't be talking about a ban. Let me bring in.
I want to talk about
I'm bringing
Kneecap,
another
but
guest now.
I find it so
I'm bringing
strange
another. I know you do.
that we are
You want to
holding
just
a
keep
higher
talking and
moral
run the
standard.
entire debate. That's fine. We're not doing that.
Piers Morgan's moral compass still spins like a broken fidget spinner. He'll support the revoking of a rap group's visa faster than you can say white phosphorus. Yet when Israel blocks food for 2 million civilians, he shrugs harder than a teenager at short time. Piers demands Ahmed to condemn Hamas on repeat, but suddenly doesn't have the time to condemn Israeli snipers popping medics. Apparently outrage has a loyalty card. Then rapper Nissim Black jumps in with the old Arabs kill more Arabs chestnut while tiptoeing around who's handling over the bombs and billion-dollar checks. Translation, it's only tribal violence when brown folks pull the trigger. I think Ahmed sliced through the hypocrisy like a hot knife through Hezbollah, reminding everyone that free speech isn't free if it expires the moment you criticize the US-backed army. But hey, if you're tired of the establishment, slam that like button, blast this video to everyone in every group chat, and drop a comment. Does Piers' reset rhetoric fool anyone anymore? Let's blow up the algorithm harder than mainstream media buries the facts. Catch you later.